What do you figure? 2 pounds? 3 pounds maybe? I don't know. What do you think? 2 pounds? 2 pounds, something like that? Okay. Yeah. 2 pounds, something like that. I want you to kind of keep that guess in mind as we go through here today, all right? We're looking at these hymnals, a couple pounds anyway. All right. So I want to think about God supplying for our needs, God blessing us, God being there for us, God supplying as we go through life. And He supplies in unusual ways. He supplies wealth, doesn't He? He supplies this for us. The Egyptians were urgent upon the people, upon the children of Israel. This was the Exodus, yes? They were getting ready to leave. They dreamed of this for 400 years. They had been slaves, right? That they might send them out of the land how? In haste, for they said, we be all dead men. And this was after the last of the plagues, right? Where the firstborn had been killed, right? Because the Egyptians were stubborn, not because God wanted to hurt anyone, but because they chose that route. And so here they were, the Egyptians urging them to get out. They wanted them out. After all this time, now they're suddenly saying, get out, get out, get out, right? And it says that they were in haste. And so God then told the Hebrews, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. All right? And so here they were borrowing these things. They spoiled, in fact, the Egyptians. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians, right? And so I want you to think about this, because God was the one who gave them the favor with the Egyptians, yes? It was God who supplied this. They had been there in this country all this time as slaves. None of what they earned went to them. It went to their masters, right? And so now they're being repaid, as it were. And they spoiled the Egyptians, plundered them, if you will. And so God supplied for the Hebrews a little start as they got going as a nation on their own. Who supplied this? It was the Lord that gave them favor. It was God that supplied their wealth. But God supplies more than that, doesn't He? God supplies a lot for us. God supplies life as well, doesn't He? God supplies even life. And imagine how the Hebrews would have felt as they're bumped up against the sea. They can't turn left or right. They can't go forward because of the sea. And they turn around and here comes the cloud. Only it wasn't the cloud over the mercy seat at this point yet. It was the cloud from the horses' hooves and the chariot wheels of the Egyptians coming after them. Right? And they've got a big problem here. They're worried about their life here now. Oh, great, we've come out here and now we all get to get killed out here. But that isn't what happened, was it? Because God supplied a way out. Notice what it says in Exodus 14:21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the seas, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Wow. God made a way through the sea. It's God supplying each time, isn't it? God supplying what they needed. And so then, verse 22, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon what? Dry ground. Wow. Think about that for a minute. How hard would that have been, given the fact that it had been wet for centuries perhaps, right? Long time, and suddenly it's dry ground. God supplied. And so they went upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. God supplying a way out. When there wasn't any way for them to go, God made a way. Yes? And more. And the Egyptians pursued. What's wrong with this picture, right? How many plagues were there? 10 plagues. They saw the power of this God, and yet they're like, yeah, we'll go into that water, between those walls of water. That's a great idea. I'm not sure what was going on in their head, other than they wanted to hurt and destroy. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. Wow. And what was the result of that? Verse 27. Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. And who overthrew? The Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And so God supplied victory as well, didn't he? Are you catching the pattern here? God supplying all the way through. God meeting the needs all the way through. So now here they are on the other side of the Red Sea. They're out there in the wilderness, right? Yeah, with a whole bunch of people, yeah. What are we going to do now? Exodus 16:4. Then the Lord said unto Moses, behold, God says, I will rain bread from you, or from heaven for you, right? Who is supplying? God is supplying again, isn't he? Right? And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day. God in the wilderness supplied food. God was blessing again, wasn't he? But out in the desert, what else do you need? Water, right? Chapter 17, verse 6. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. Who's supplying this water? Moses? You know, right? It was God supplying the water, wasn't it? So he supplied a way out of Egypt. He supplied them with a financial start to it. He supplied them with a way through the Red Sea. He supplied them with victory over their enemies. He supplied them with food. He supplied them with water. And indeed, Deuteronomy says, thy raiment waxed not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell these 40 years. So they didn't even need Walmart. Right? Yeah, I'm looking forward to that day. And they didn't need the doctor. Their foot didn't swell. They had health as they were out there, eating what God told them to eat, right? What he supplied to them. And they had what God was supplying. It's amazing. When I was in school studying for my master's degree, I was in the library working and typing some things up and getting ready to print, and realized I didn't have any paper. And there was a guy there working beside me, and I asked him, hey, do you have some paper, So he gave me some paper, and so I started printing stuff out, and as I was busy with this, he says, I need one of those pages back. So I gave him a page back, and I finished with like 5 still left. Is this a problem that he asked me for a page back? No, this was not an issue, was it? He supplied what I needed, and more, and he asked for a little back. Okay, this is not a problem, right? I can do this, right? I should do this. Should I be upset at him? Well, you gave it to me, so I'm not giving it back. I'm not going to do that, am I? No. God asked his people for a little bit of return as well, didn't he? After he supplied all these things to them in the desert, all these things in the wilderness, God asked for a little bit back, didn't he? He asks for a return. And so it says in Exodus 35, verses 4 and 5, and Moses spake unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying, take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Yes? And so sometimes we might get a little upset at that word there. It says, this is the thing which the Lord, what? Command. He's commanding this? Is this a problem? Come on. He has supplied everything, right? And let's see, he's God, isn't he? Does he have a right to command? Yeah. So he's supplied us with everything, and he has the right to command us. Why do we take exception at this sometimes? Is that where we should be? Take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. That's what God was asking for. And yet, if we look in the finishing of verse 5, it says, whoever is of a willing heart. God wants us to be willing about this. He doesn't want us to just, no, I'm not doing this. That's not how this works. And it's not even that we give because, well, what will the guy in the pew next to me think if I don't give anything, or if I only put a George in there? Right? That's not why we give, is it? We give from a willing heart, recognizing what God has done for us already and recognizing who he is, yes? We give a return to the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it, an offering of the Lord, gold and silver and brass. And this was for the building up of God's house, to be a blessing to God. And so they gave. But I wonder how many of us are willing-hearted, How many of us have an attitude toward this whole life like Job did, and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return, right? The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. What does he finish with? Blessed be the name of the Lord. If God supplied it once, can he supply it again? Right? If God has given and he asks for it back, what's the problem here? He's the one who can take care of us, yes? He's the one who's there for us all the time. And so let's see how they gave. We've been reading about this in our daily readings that we've been reading since the beginning of the year. Well, you're with me, right? You know where we're going with this, you know? And so it says in Exodus 38, verse 24, all the gold that was occupied for the work, in all the work of the holy place, even the gold of the offerings, was 29 talents and 730 shekels. All right? And so this was for the building of the sanctuary, for the building of the house of the Lord. And so this was about, well, it was in fact exactly 29 talents and 730 shekels. That's about 3,140 pounds. Okay, wait a minute. 3,140 pounds of what? Gold. Gold. Yes, gold. Think about that for just a second. This was gold. You remember this morning's reading? Do you remember this morning's reading where we read about the offerings that they brought just at the dedication of all of this stuff, right? We read about the offerings for the dedication of all this stuff this morning. And they brought X amount of various things. The silver pans with the flour and everything. You remember all that this morning, right? Do you remember the gold spoons? Right? The gold spoons. They brought 12 gold spoons, and those gold spoons weren't very big. They or maybe your version said something different, but in the King James it said spoons. I picture spoons. So they had these spoons. The spoons, all 3 of them, or all 12 of them, added up to about 3 pounds. Okay? And I looked it up this morning, and if you took the current price of gold, which is not measured by pounds, it's measured by ounces, right? Yeah, just the spoons, 3 pounds that they brought in our reading this morning was about $76,000. Yeah. And this was 3,000 pounds plus. Yeah. That was pretty serious, don't you think? Yeah. And the silver of them that were numbered of the congregation was 100 talents, and 1,703 shekels. So this was 9,575 pounds of silver, almost 10,000 pounds of silver. Wow. And bronze. The brass of the offering was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. So this was about 7,500 pounds. Yeah. Now you know why this morning they accepted those carts. Yeah, this was a lot to carry, wasn't it? This is why they did it. So, let's see. This is about 2.2 pounds. 2.2 pounds. So, that would be about 34 hymnals, for just one of those talents of gold or silver or bronze. And so for the total amount of gold, that'd be almost 1,000 hymnals weight. So yeah, take this, feel it again, take that, multiply by 1,000, and that's how much gold they had. Yeah, that's how much they gave. Yeah, about 988 hymnals worth. That's a lot. But I want you to remember something. This isn't about the gold or the silver or the bronze, is it? What is it about? It's not about how much it weighs in hymnals, really. It's whosoever is of a willing heart. I want you to be thinking about your relationship with God this morning, because that's what this is all about, isn't it? This is about returning to the Lord because He has blessed you so much, because He's there. Now, do I think that our economy is going to continue being super great forever? No. So what does that mean when things go south? Does that mean, well, I need to just not return that tithe? I just need to not give that offering? Is that what it's all about? No. But if you lose your job and you're not making anything, how much is your tithe? Right? God's got a system here. He's going to take care of you, isn't He? He will be there for you. All right? Whosoever is of a willing heart. God is looking for your heart. He wants you. Because truth is we came out of the womb with nothing. We're leaving this earth with nothing, right? What good is it to hang on to it anyway? Right? You know what I mean? Second Corinthians chapter 8. Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. I want you to notice here that this is by the grace of God, what we're about to talk about. This is by the grace of God. This wasn't because the Macedonians were very cool. This is because of the grace of God. How that in a great trial of affliction, what were they in? A great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty. Wait, their poverty abounded? Yeah, that's what it says. Unto the riches of their liberality. They gave even when they really couldn't. And it goes on. For to their power, in other words, up to how much they could give. And then he says, I bear record, yea, and beyond their power, more than they should have given. They were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty. In other words, they came saying, take it, take it. And Paul was saying, I know your situation. I know you really have this difficulty. But they were urging him to take it, right? And take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. Remember, they were asking for an offering to help the people who were suffering. And so the people of Macedonia were willing to give even above what they should have, maybe. And this they did, not as we hoped, but first gave what? Their own selves. Brothers and sisters, that's the key to this. I want you to give not just money, but yourself. Give your heart to God. Start there. That's where all the rest of it begins, isn't it? That's where it begins. To give yourself willingly. A living example. Review and Herald. A living example of an unselfish character, which is after the example of Christ, does what? Has great power upon men. And so, as we help others, that has an influence on them. They feel God working through what we can do to bless them, right? We can bless them. And so we want to be helping others. Yes, today we're asking for your money. That is true. Just as Moses did thousands of years ago, right? but I want you to give more than just your gold. As we wander in this desert, I want you to give your heart more fully to God than ever before. And let me be honest. Can I be honest? If you're not giving willingly, don't give. I want you to give from a heart of love. That's what it's really all about. That's what it's all about. And so, give yourself to the Lord 100%. Give yourself to God. That's what this is really all about. That's what it's all about. Time is too short, friends, not to do that, isn't it? I mean, you look at the newspapers today and it's just telling you, we don't have time not to be 100% in with God, do we? Right? And then number 2, remember who supplies your wealth and health and necessities. Who is it that gives that? It's God, right? It is God. And then don't take away from your tithe. All right, Pastor, I'll give to your church. That's fine. So you take away tithe. That's not how this works. Return a faithful tithe and an offering, right? We're not going to rob Peter to pay Paul. We're going to return the faithful tithe, 10% as tithe. That's what the Lord asks for. That's how this works. Bring it to the storehouse. You remember Jesus when he was sitting there watching people coming and giving, right? And he talked about the widow that came and gave 2 mites, right? That she had given so much. Might Jesus have run over to her and said, hey, wait. Don't do that. Don't you know that those guys might use that very money right there as the bribe to get one of my disciples to turn me in? They aren't going to use that money wisely. Don't give it to them. Did Jesus say that to them? To her? No. He might have said, now there's some good guys down by the Dead Sea. There's some Essenes down there. They're copying Scripture. They're doing good stuff. Give your tithe to them. Is that what Jesus said? No, that's not what he said. And so, when we're asked to give our tithe, give it the way that it's there for, all right? And then, yes, support this local church with a percentage of your income as well. That's not for us to say. That's for you and the Lord to work out, right? You know the story of J.C. Penney, right? Right? He started out just having a hard time with that 10%, but by the time he finished, he was giving 90 and keeping 10, right? And so you work with the Lord on what should be done there, all right? And then consider some other projects we have going on. Think about what the Lord would have you do. You know, we have a flea market that's blessing people, giving out literature and helping people find Jesus. There are missions that we're sponsoring, all kinds of things, right? We're looking at maybe even, starting an adventurer club or Pathfinder club or something. How can we help? Not just the physical building, but to grow the church, to help people out there know about Jesus, right? That's what we want to do. Bless others. Because that's what God has done to us, right? He's blessed us. And maybe it's not just your money that will help bless them. Maybe we need to return more to God. Maybe some time or talents, right? Maybe we can help God with those things as well. Early Writings, page 121. If they would live a little poorer and give to the cause of God to help forward the truth, it would be a sacrifice on their part. Nobody's arguing that. Nobody's arguing that. And when God rewards every man according to his works, it would be remembered by him. How many of you want to be remembered by God? Yeah, right? I want to be remembered by God. Absolutely. And so Jesus says, and behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me. I want that for each of you. I want you to look up in the sky and say, lo, this is my God. We have waited for him, and he will save us, yes? That's what we're looking for. And it starts with that relationship, with giving that 100% of yourself, right? That's where it is. I want you to be ready. Our closing hymn, number 309. 309, please remain seated as you look for 309. And may the words of this hymn be the sentiment of your heart. 309, please.
Please stand.